Hello and welcome back to the Granularity studio. I'm now joined by Joel from Onzo, and I've known Onzo through various different relationships, personal ones as well as watching what you do. And you guys have made a transition to becoming a data analytics company, and I know we ran a webinar with Nick, your CTO, where there were some very interesting insights from your analytics, which I think complete a conversation theme throughout all of these interviews. And I'll let you talk about them, but yeah, I find it fascinating that you can recognize individual appliances just through analytics.
Yeah, so we've been developing software that enables us, using sophisticated algorithms, to break the whole house's energy usage down into streams of data about the individual appliances. I think that's pretty important. It's pretty important for consumers and their ability to understand what they do with this product in their house. I think we've all been used to receiving it and then paying for it, but actually we don't really think about how we use it because the use is attached to the appliance itself. We don't buy it as a commodity, so it's not like other things that we purchase. And so we've been trying to do that with the different levels of resolution of data that are available. Not very granular in the case of most smart metering, sadly, and I think that's a huge missed opportunity.
So you think the granularity is in smart metering, because what is it now, 15-minute intervals or something like that?
Yeah, between 15 minutes and an hour, typically. And of course, within that resolution, it's hard to see many things, although we've got algorithms that can extract insight even from 15-minute data.
So let's explore that for a second.
Yeah.
Imagine you could get the, I don't know, 3-4 second intervals that you want. What can you do with that versus where we are now? Would you just open up the...
Yeah, so at 15-minute level, you can get large timed loads, so you can see things like heating, air conditioning. Now, they're important because they use a lot of energy, but once you start to open up data down to the 1-minute level, or even preferably the 1-second level, and we've got a very clever algorithm that compresses that data, so you're moving quite small packet sizes around, you can see many more appliances, and you can see down to the level of the washing machine, the fridge. You can't see the very small items of load when you plug in your phone charger, but I don't think that's very important. They don't use much energy, you don't use them very often, and we actually capture the whole of the base load usage as one item out of the breakdown of the energy stream. So what you then get to understand is what appliances exist, how efficient those appliances are. We can even monitor the condition of appliances and watch as they deteriorate over time, which suggests a replacement cycle probably ahead of a consumer's understanding of that. So I think it's useful for the consumer to see that level of activity, but there are other clever ways of applying the knowledge as well, which is of use both to the consumer and to the utility. So for example, we've got an algorithm that spots changes in levels of usage, and we're able to diagnose what the appliance is that's driving that. So if your heating has come on significantly before other people's heating, we could drop you a text and say, your bill is going to be higher. By the way, most people haven't turned their heating on yet. I'm not saying you should turn it off, but it gives you the opportunity to have knowledge that you wouldn't otherwise have had.
And that gives some interesting granularity and insight as well, because I would imagine you'd be able to say things like, hey, your washing machine might need descaling because it's going off optimal.
That's right, or if you replace the fridge you have with a different fridge, then you would be able to get a payback within a period of X, depending on the relative efficiency of the fridges. So that's an area that might interest appliance manufacturers also, who are looking to sell appliances into the home.
So now let's take a little bit of a leap forward. It's one of the things that we've been covering as well, where things like people saying, oh, you can have in-home displays and so on. And I think, look, it's all got to be on. It's got to be on your iPhone. It's got to be on the thing that you carry with you. But here is the other thing. Most people probably won't maybe turn the fridge off and leave it dormant for 2 hours or whatever, because that needs a lot of interaction. What you're describing is actually quite an agile and sophisticated control network within the home.
Yes.
Do you think that the time will come, and maybe sort of early tech adopters will be the lead on that, where we need to open up our home to this technology, not be afraid of the connection with the utility and the bill, in order to have the most, what I call, efficient and comfortable energy experience within our domain, and energy experience includes gas and water and things like that.
Yes, I think your hypothesis is broadly correct. I'd like to just say on displays, I personally am sad that the display seems to have died. There's only one display company here, I think, this year. 3 years ago, there were probably at least a dozen. And I think it's sad because I think the utilities have conducted small pilots with relatively poorly designed technology in terms of its human interaction, and this will be my link to the answer to the rest of your question. And I don't think you should condemn a technology by testing poor versions of it. That's a terrible shame. However, in relation to people's activities and the automation of control, I think that's definitely the way it'll go. In the early days, naturally, the early adopters are people who have time and the interest in taking actions to manage energy in their home, but really, we're all too busy to be doing that. The vast majority of people, I think, will want it automated. Look at braking in cars, I think is a good analogy for us. So you can teach people to do cadence braking and to brake more effectively, but the reality is most cars have ABS because you just then press the pedal and the machine does the work for you. And I think what we've looked at with some of our algorithms, for example, is not just giving people information about the heating control, which I mentioned earlier, but actually feeding that automatically into a system that can set up the default options for them so that it matches their lifestyle. We don't have time in our lives to set the heating. I don't know if you've got heating at home. I mean, how often do you go and change the timings of it depending on the season or what time you're going to be home that day? I don't. I don't think most people do. But if I had a system that did that for me automatically and, for example, connected up when I left the office, which my mobile phone knows, with getting home, and I didn't have to interact with that, I think that's got to be the way forward.
No, I agree, because what you're talking about there is convenience.
Yes.
And we're all, we're living in an age where everything is so interconnected. I think, a generation that's coming through will be less paranoid about having this sort of thing because they'll want the convenience of it.
Well, I think cost, comfort, and convenience all get tied together, actually, and you're certainly right about the generational differences. I think those play out in other areas as well. Let's take privacy, which is probably a topic worth mentioning in relation to inferring appliance usage from whole house data. A younger generation is growing up who are much freer with their data and sharing things because they know that they obtain benefits from it. And if you look at what's happened in Germany, you've got an age of decision maker that is substantively removed from a large percentage of the population who are much happier. And if you look at what happened with Google Street View in Germany, there was a big issue around privacy. In the end, they gave them an opt-out to pixelate their homes. 200,000 people did out of 40 million. So a very small percentage actually want to go down that route. And I think the same applies to these other technologies. It's going to be a small percentage of people who don't want to share their data, whilst the vast majority of people benefit from that data being available and the insight that can be obtained from it.
And that's fine. People are given the choice. If you want to share, you don't share. But, I was reading, on that point, I was reading a study about exactly to your point, about the attitude, the generational shift, the attitude towards data, and all this paranoia about, advertisers know too much about me. And when they did a survey of the younger generation, they said, well, actually, I don't care about that as long as the advertisers use it wisely.
That's
so,
right.
So
well,
I am being given services.
Wise use and personal relevance.
Yes.
And again, I think this is true of the energy industry. Today you see solutions which are universal. So you all get sent the same energy report, for example. I don't think that's going to last very long because in the rest of our lives, everything is personalized to us. And that's a good thing. And we welcome things that are relevant. We don't want things that are irrelevant. So it's the equivalent of junk mail versus targeted advertising, I think.
And we're kind of coming to the end of our time here in the studio. In terms of data analytics, going back to an issue that was also prevalent through the theme of these interviews, skills and skill sets.
Yeah.
Now, I know you guys have that in-house, but let me ask you a bigger question. Do we need to be bringing, training, reskilling more people into this data analytics space in order to get the most out of the data we've got now?
I don't know that we'll be able to reskill people, but I certainly think it's going to be an area that's going to grow in terms of the number of people that it needs. Right now, they're in relatively scarce supply. That's pushed up the price of them. You know, I employ 6 to 8 people in central London because it's a good place for those skills, because we have a large financial services industry, as well as some web industry. So there's a good concentration. But in many parts of the world, that doesn't exist, and people are struggling to find the right skills. The technical skills also need to be married with an understanding of the industry, because the technical skill is nothing without the correct application of it. So I think you need to marry those two things together. I'd certainly like to see more people with the skills available.
No, absolutely. Joel, thank you very much for making the time to be in the studio. Joel from Onzo, the analytics company. I hope you enjoyed that. I know it threads through with some of the other conversation we've been having with some of the demand response applications and so on, and you'll be able to see many more of those on Granularity. Thank you again for watching. We're coming to the end of European Utility Week, but there's still about 3 or 4 more interviews to go, so I hope you enjoy those as well. Thanks again, Joe.
Thank you very much. Cheers. Okay.